All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are back in the house, H2O house, and I'm so thrilled that you are here sharing a space with me. And I'm so thrilled to have my guest, my brother today on the show. And as we always do before we get started, we're just going to take in some of those nice, good breaths. Good thing that nobody's in your face. And I'm not in your face because I just had some food and I have not brushed my mouth yet. So it's all good because you can't smell it anyway, hopefully. All right, deep breaths in. Just hold it up top. Two more times with me. One last time. Mm, 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 mm. Been practicing on this whole gentle approach to life. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot to learn about that. I will not spend too much time talking about it, but I just want to seed that into somebody's thinking. Sometimes we got to be gentle. We got to learn to be gentle. And with that gentleness, be humble. I think the song said, sit down, be humble, and be gentle. Be gentle. There's nothing wrong with it. There's a lot to learn about that. As we shift into our podcast, I do want to start us off by just showing a couple of material that I have. This time, instead of going through just talking about it and take you from here to there, I am still going to take you to my website, put in a couple of video feeds, and then we're going to go and introduce our guests for today and just have fun. The theme of our podcast is resilience. And our guest today is an individual that represents resilience, resilience, resilience. When you think of that flower cracking through the concrete, this is one of the individuals that comes to mind for many reasons, and you will find out here soon. So let me share my screen with you. Give me a couple of seconds, and we'll move further into the H2O podcast. Okay, and this is the new music website. It's still under construction, but when you hit the hyperlinks, we've transitioned the music to its own separate page. On IG, you probably saw the promotions for the new music page, a separate music page. So anyway, you're probably wondering, did you step back about 10 or 15 years because this internet and these transitions were extremely slow, but it is 2022. Let me remind you. So let me stop sharing. Let us move on from there. To my guest, you still with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm not sure if the volume, I think that's on me. Can you hear me pretty good?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. Am I coming in loud enough or no?
I think I did something to my volume. Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so before we formally introduce our guest for today, I have a couple of rapid fire questions for this young man, and I'm referring to this section as the interpretation lounge. So he gets the privilege to interpret some of the quotes that I'm going to share with him, and then he will formally introduce himself. We'll go further into the show. Mr. Vash,
Yes, sir.
I'm going to read out a quote of some person, and I want you to, on the spot, tell me the meaning that, give us your interpretation of this quote.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Let's go. Let's go.
I
I'm
figured
ready.
you'd like that. So I'm going to start with the very heavy one. I figured that you can handle this.
Okay. Okay.
This is from the recent documentary of yours truly from Chi-Town, Kanye West. This was a
Mm,
particular section that that between him and his mom that really stuck out to me. And I was like, this is perfect for a quote for Mr. Vash. And it reads, a giant looks in the mirror and sees nothing. I'll read that one more time. A giant looks in the mirror and sees nothing, by Donda West, Kanye West, mother.
mm.
How do you interpret that? Where does that sit with you? Where does it land?
Man, so I have not seen the documentary, so I have no kind of clue in what type of way she was meaning this. But how I interpret it as, I think is how people tend to see a person. You know what I mean? People can look at you a certain way, and whatever you're doing, right? Like for me, right? I'm a tall person, so that's why I'm going to identify it as like, oh, people look at me as a giant or something. You know what I'm saying? They see me as this, they see me as that. But when I look into the mirror, like I don't see that. You know what I
Mm,
mean? So
mhm,
when I heard when you said like looking in the mirror and don't see anything, I'm like I can I can get behind that. Like I know what that's like of just like everybody sees you one way, but you look in the mirror and be like, I don't see that. I don't see none of what you all are talking about.
mm.
That's how I interpret it.
Well, you must have been drinking that Chicago water because that was very close to the interpretation that she gave. I don't want to give it away if you haven't seen it. from, in my opinion, in my experience, it's a really good documentary, and the music interludes, man, love it. So if you haven't seen it, especially being a native of Chicago, or Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, I would say definitely watch it. But then because it is Kanye West, I think it's something that that many of us should observe. So moving on to our next one. The quote is, "I'm tall because God liked me so much, He decided to supersize me." I'm just saying. I'll read it one more time. I'm tall because God liked me so much, He decided to supersize me. I'm just saying.
That's a good one. Oh man, this is good. I like this. I like this.
Yeah, I thought you liked this little customization I created for you.
Man, I don't know. I look at it. I interpret it as when God created me, He knew what He was doing, like He knows what He's doing with all of us. But He was like, you know what? For what I'm calling for you to do, for whatever reason, it needs some height. You know what I mean? It needs some height attached to it, because when you're tall, before anybody knows anything about what you are, what kind of fruit that you bear or anything, it's the height. That is the thing that people look at. And then after that, then comes everything else. So I feel as though it's a quote saying, like, you know, even when you have a lot to show, to give what God has given you, sometimes you just need a little bit of extra to stand out amongst everybody else. You know what I mean? So you don't get crowded in with everybody else. That's what I took away from it. That's a good one, though. I like that.
I love it. I like it too. And I like your interpretation in the interpretation lounge. Last one. Being tall lets people look up to you. And I don't know who quote that was. The last two, I really don't. But being tall lets people look up to you. What does that mean to you, and where does that land?
So for me, I don't look at that as physical height wise, because I look up to you. I'm taller than you, but I look up to you. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I look at that as a person of great influence, being looked up at. You know what I mean? And you could be any kind of height, any kind of walk of life for somebody to look up to you. You don't have to have any special doodads, height, none of that. You know what I mean? Like, all it takes is for you to be influential and people can look up to you.
Wow. Well, gratitude to you, man, for expressing that. I appreciate that. And I mean that.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm sure many are wondering, how exactly tall are you?
Oh man, see, that required a lot of growth for me. That's kind of funny that I said that, but no, that question, that question, it's haunted me in my dreams for years. It's only these last few years that I've started to look at it differently. But to answer your question, man, the last time I went to the doctor and I got checked, I want to say I was 6'11". That's what they said.
Oh, wow.
I've been telling everybody I've been 6'8" for like the longest, just because, like, I don't know, man. Like, I try to deter from the height conversation altogether. Sure. So I just tell people a number, like, because I realize, like, if I say something really high, then people are just gonna be like, no, we're gonna park the car and we're gonna discuss this. You know what I mean? But if I tell them a certain height, which they already have in their minds, then it'll quickly go from, all right, you're that tall, so okay, so what are you doing with it? And to be honest with you, I'd much rather deal with that kind of dialogue and question rather than just deal with the height question, because it's just like, all right, man, I've been getting asked this all my life, man. Ever since I can remember, yo, you're tall, you're gonna be really tall one day, and lo and behold, I'm really tall, and it's just like, that's just been the topic of discussion. But yeah, to answer your question, there's a long route about saying it, but yeah, 6'11" officially.
Wow. Well, you know, it's so funny because I never knew. Firstly, I never knew your true height, because the last time I think I've ever asked you about it, you said you were 6'7". So that difference makes a difference. And then the other part to that is the insensitivity that I've had for you regarding your height. Never thought that would have been an issue, but I get that because my physical size has always been, now I'm much smaller now, but growing up, my physical size has always been a topic of discussion. And as I got older, I grew to despise conversations about my physique, or someone always grabbing my arms or touching my chest, or, slapping my leg, feeling like a piece of stock, on the auction board somewhere saying, oh, okay, hey, this one's,
Yeah.
Anyway, probably took it too deep, too quick.
No.
But nonetheless, you feel like something that's going to be auctioned off after a while, because people point out your body, and they tell you what sport you should play. Or are you playing football? Are you doing this? And after a while, it's like, wow. So I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Well, tell the world who you are. First, introduce what you do, and then who are you?
Right. So, I guess a short way of saying it is that I'm an artist. To be more detail orientated, I draw, I do a podcast weekly. I'm an author, but I guess the most important thing for me on the artistic side of things is I'm a poet. That's what opened the doors to everything else. Excuse me. Yeah, so all in all, I'm a poet. I have done, I've been writing poetry since I was freshman in high school. I'm 30 now. So it's been a while. It's been a while that I've been doing this. Got 3 poetry books out currently. Like I said, I touched on the podcast and everything else. So yeah, all in all, I'm an artist. I love the arts in general. I believe that you can express yourself freely through art. It's not to say that you can't express yourself in other ways. It's just something about doing it in an artistic way that can help inspire other people. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But yeah, that's what I do. But who I am, I'm Vash from Chicago. That's not my legal name, but I go by that as a stage name or whatnot. I got that from an anime called Trigun. I don't know if anybody would be familiar with it, but when I was coming up, I lived in a pretty rough neighborhood. I lived in the hood. There was a lot of negativity and violence. There weren't a lot of positive influences, just like in the neighborhood. Obviously on TV and TV shows, movies and stuff like that, there were positive influences. But as far as like in the vicinity of it, outside of my family, there were none. So one day I was watching TV and this anime came on, and it was like set in the old Western times. And this guy, he was a gunslinger, but his whole rule of thumb was, I'm not going to kill you. You know what I mean? Like, I want to protect people. I want to save lives and whatnot, including your own. Like, I don't want to kill you. Yeah, you might get hauled off to jail somewhere.
He had ethics about himself, huh?
Yeah, he had ethics about him. And it's just like, for me, seeing that as a kid, it was like that people, that happens. People actually have this kind of thought process of like, you shouldn't kill people? What? You're a gunslinger. Like, all of these things, they didn't match up. But after watching it and everything, like, it really resonated with me. Like, his character, like how his ethics, how his standards, his morals and everything, like, it really stood out to me as a real heavy positive influence. So I took on the name of the main character in that show, which is Vash. But yeah, I'm from South Side Chicago, Inglewood. You know what I mean? Please don't ask me. I'm from 79th, because I'm not. You know, I know that's a popular thing to ask people from Chicago. Are you from San? Are you from Chan? Listen, no. I'm not. But yeah, I've been in Chicago all my whole life. You know, I was really blessed to run across the man, the myth, the legend that, you know, is the creator of this wonderful podcast, Mr. Roger Chambers in Chicago. You know what I'm saying?
Not the myth and the legend. Not already.
The legend, man. So I'm very grateful that our paths crossed, because I've said it on my podcast. I've said it to him. He's been such a great person in my life. You know, from brotherhood to being real good as a friend, mentorship, the whole shebang. You know what I mean? God didn't bring you past my path for no reason. You know what I mean? You've helped inspire me. You've there have been times where I have thought about things which may not have been in the best interest of me, right? But then I would just have this random thought of, what would Rod think? What would Rod do? Like if Rod was right here, right now, and you said you were going to do X, Y, and Z, what would he tell you? And I had to think about it and be like, yeah, Rod wouldn't be too happy about that. And Rod's a good guy. He's a good judge of character. You know what? Let's just turn this around. Let's just do this instead. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, you don't realize what kind of impact you have on a person. You know what I mean? You might think it's just something that, you guys can just meet up, talk and laugh and, talk about a little bit of life with each other and then, go separate ways and this, that. But no, bro, you have been nothing short of impactful on my life. And I appreciate that. And I love you, bro.
Wow. Well, I definitely wasn't expecting that, man. Not that you haven't been vocal about who I've represented in your life before. You've from the time I've known you, from the time that there's been any impact, you've been very vocal about that. And that's one of the things I really value and I appreciate. And I want you to know I don't take that lightly. But hearing it again, just it humbles me even the more. And I appreciate that. I value those words. And as I've shared with you, you guys inspire me in a very particular reason because I had the chance to be with y'all for a few summers, for almost 2 years in the Chicago area. And to have you guys come to the house and we eat and we have our Thursdays. In fact, I keep up with Julian, with Juju, and actually he keeps up with me. He calls on a if we don't talk at least once or twice a month, he gonna call, he gonna ring up. But you'll remember on those Thursday nights that we would go out that and he don't mind me saying this, I'm sure he would be my trouble one. He would be my roughneck. But it's so good to see you guys grow as young men and see you come into your own and to see you guys just you're blossoming and you had every reason not to, but you made a decision to keep moving forward. And to hear you say that, man, just makes what I do that much more, I do it with that much more passion and with that much more conviction. So I appreciate you, man. Love you. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, no problem,
And
bro.
the show is just getting started. So don't y'all log off too soon. That being said, tell me a little bit more about your journey as a writer. What inspired that? And I'm going to go a little bit off key from our questions, but what inspired you that freshman year that made you say, you know what, this is something that I want to do? Especially because we have so many people out there, younger people, who are flirting around with the arts. They're not really sure what they want to do in their lives. And I still work with high school kids right now. And to hear them get excited about an adult affirming their passions or even inquiring, what do you think that I'm going to do when I get older? That question to me, I don't know why, but it's something very tender to me and it's something I want to protect. And I want to nurture that as much as I can without giving them an answer, but helping to guide and direct them. So you being a younger man and an adult man, what out of your experiences can you share in that moment of inspiration that has ignited you to be where you are today as an author, as a podcaster, et cetera, et cetera? That's a long question, but you filter through it and answer it.
Yeah. All right. So for me, writing, it started when I was little. It started much earlier than freshman year. I started writing poetry in freshman year, but as far as writing in general, I started that maybe back in 5th grade. And it was just me. It was just me from reading a lot. I don't know what it was. I guess it was just the books that were available to me, but I just fell in love with reading. Just whatever, you know what I mean? Like any kind of like children's book that was out at the time, before Harry Potter came out, because obviously I was on board on that train, but like there were a lot of, you know, different kind of books out. And by the time I want to say, well, even before fifth grade, when I first started writing, before then, I was in love with reading. So at first or second grade, I had about a sixth or seventh grade level reading level.
Oh,
so I was already reading at that because that's how much I was reading.
wow.
So my vocabulary and everything else was far ahead of everybody else's. The teacher would ask us to read passages in our books, and I'm just flying through the whole book because it's just like, well, this story was good. And like, you know, they would give us about 25 minutes, you know, to read amongst ourselves or whatnot. And it's just like, well, I finished with this passage that we're supposed to be reading about 2 minutes ago. And you just gave us this 5 minutes ago. So I'm not just going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs. I can't, you know, phones weren't a thing back then, you know. So it was like, I guess I'm just going to go ahead and read on. So I read on, and I developed a passion and a love for reading, and that transferred all the way to fifth grade when I actually had a chance to write like a short story. And then from there, I realized like, yo, I love this. I love being able to come up in my mind, create something, and then write it down on paper and with all of the details and everything that I can, so somebody else can see what I had in my head as well.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's when you say like what drove me and everything else, I think one of the things that drove me, on top of me having a thirst for it, a hunger for reading and writing, was coming up. There were Black authors, but in school, in school, like there weren't that many. You know what I mean? There were a few books that I read by Black authors, you know, like some books by Walter Dean Myers, like Scorpion and stuff like that, and the Blueford series books back in the day. Like there were a few of them, but they were all more realistic. You know what I mean? Like things of struggle and strife and things like that, which is fine, right? But for me, I was into the sci-fi things. You know what I'm saying? I was into the superheroes. I was into the fantasy with the wizards, the dragons, and everything else like that. And I only saw white authors doing that. You know what I mean? And like the characters and the things that you would see on the cover, they weren't Black. And that was the thing for me, because I told myself one day, it's like, you know, I'm going to write a book and it's going to have some Black characters in there, because I want to see somebody like me in those type of predicaments. I want to see a Black guy fighting a dragon, trying to save a princess. Why not? You know what I'm saying? Like there's no reason why there can't be that. And I'm not shaming any authors for not doing that before. You know what I'm saying? Like your art is your art, create what you want to create. But that was definitely an inspiration for me on the writing side of things, which is where I'm at now with writing my first novel. But you asked about poetry, but I had to say that because that was hand in hand with things. So I'm getting to the poetry part.
Let me ask you this. I know back in, I'm 8 years, I think 8 years older. So we're not too far apart. But did you guys have the Scholastic Book Fair?
Yes.
That my mom wouldn't let me get any video games or anything like that. But if they want to get me in order in some ways, tell me that I was not going to get money for books at the Scholastic Book Fair.
Man,
it worked sometime, but that was my stuff.
Man, it's like the Scholastic Book Fair, like book fairs in general, like that was my jam. Like that was like Christmas for me.
Oh man,
like some kids would go in there, like they didn't really have interest in reading. They go in there and be bored. Like I went in there and I was like a kid going into a candy store, and they were like, "All right, you guys got 20 minutes because all around the whole school has to come in here. So you guys got 20 minutes, find something you like and exit out this way. And I'm looking like, you're telling me I have 20 minutes to pick like 2 books out of all of this? Like, it's gonna take me 20 minutes just to get through this section and looking at, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, it was so euphoric just being in there surrounded by all of those things, bro. I loved it.
Well, and you pointed out something that I think was really important, because this really turned up my passion for reading, is when I saw representation. And so as I got older, and I'm sure you can probably attest to this as well, as I got older and we started learning about topics related to representation, whether it be in television shows or media or some type of mediums, such as magazines or books, that was like the game changer for me, to be able to see people that looked like me in these books and the storylines in these books that were just on point. What was that moment like for you? You alluded to it, but if you can kind of expound on that, when you would go to these scholastic book fairs or when you would go into the library and you saw the characters, whether they were superheroes or whatever, that looked like you, what did that feel like? Take us back to that moment.
It felt good. It felt like my mom, my parents, my family, like they had already put me on to game about, unfortunately, how the world is. You know what I mean? With the lack of representation, why there's a lack of it. You know what I mean? Like all of those racial things, and it was a bummer, right? As a kid that don't know much about the world yet, to hear something like that and still not really able to fully comprehend it, like adults act like this. Why? But anyway, like it to see somebody that looked like me and the type of content that I wanted to consume, it was mind changing. You know, it was just like I instantly gravitated towards it. Like it could have been a book that wasn't even really that good. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It didn't matter. To be able to see someone that looked like me on the cover, me to be able to look at it and identify with it, it's like, for some reason, like I could put myself in their shoes. Like it's kind of like a mental role play. It's just like I could see myself, and like I could see myself, you know, being off in this distant land, getting into to mischief and everything else like that. Like I could visually see it. It was a getaway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that I think that's like the most important thing. Like when you're trying to consume any kind of like entertainment media or whatnot, regardless of whether it's from TV or books or whatnot, like you want to get taken away. You know what I mean?
Minute. Let me ask you, you remember Word Up magazine?
I do.
That just popped up on my head when you started talking about the different content. But anyway, back to reading.
Yeah, no, like it's just being able to see that, man, being taken away to a whole nother world.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's supposed to do. You know what I mean? And to be able to see somebody that looks like you, that can represent you, it just makes it all the more better, you know?
Man, I couldn't have said any better. When you start talking about the heroes and the like the anime and things like that, you know, one of the comic books, I'll always remember this. Of course, I think many of us was highly influenced by the X-Men's and, oh man, all the other cartoons I remember out there. Mighty Max with the hat. Remember his hat would glow up and he would go into these different portals and whatnot. What is it, Captain Planet? All of the fantasy, sci-fi kinds of things. And I remember going to a Black Expo in Dallas, Texas, when I had to be maybe fourth grade or so. And the first time I saw this comic book called Brother Man, and Brother Man was the equivalent of Superman, but he was an urban legend, if you will. Kind of like, do you remember the movie Meteor Man with Robert Townsend?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I know it's probably like a really cheesy movie, but that was like my prequel to Meteor Man. did you ever hear about Brother Man comic books?
I want to say I start hearing about it when I got older. When I was in school, no. When I
Okay.
got older, yeah, I started hearing about it. Yeah.
Well, I never got the content actually in school, but we went to it was like I said, it was a Black Expo where I saw the comic book and I begged my mom, I was like, I got to have this. Can I please have $1.25 or $5, or however much it was at that time? And she let me get 3 of those, man. But again, just to talk about that connection with in our world, superheroes and many kids' worlds, you got that superhero who you want to be like. And the moment you see it, and I couldn't explain it then, the power that had to see that character that looked like me, that was fighting crime, that had this focus and this discipline. I would go through and I would draw those characters and I would read those books over and over and over again. Like I knew the ending of it, but I would even stop even reading to the end and just go back and read the beginning because I didn't want it to end. but yeah, man, I completely and totally connect with you on that passion of reading. Continue to take us down your journey. So you started with, in that elementary time, you're reading books, you're enjoying it, you find out you have this gift where you can write and bring your thoughts to written expression. From elementary to junior high, what was this transition like?
It eventually it kind of died down. I took a break from reading, and to be honest with you, it didn't really pick back up until later in life as far as the reading portion goes. Because when you're in elementary school, you deal with the social constructs of school. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And for me, I have never been popular in school. Maybe arguably, maybe my senior year, maybe, if you want to argue with that. But for all the rest of my life, I've been an outcast. You know what I'm saying? I could count on my hand how many friends I had. You know what I'm saying? I got picked on, the whole shebang. So to try to make myself more, I don't know, to make myself more appealing to the popular kids, because they weren't reading books. You know what I'm saying? What were the popular kids doing? Oh, they were into sports and things. And that's not to say that I wasn't into sports, but I just wasn't into sports that heavy. But the cool kids were. And if I want to be a cool kid, then I got to make some sacrifices. So I went ahead and I stopped reading so much and I got into sports and basketball. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And then as a teenager, girls came into play. So it's trying to look cool and be cool, and whatever the girls like, I'm trying to be what they love. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's just going into that. And that led to the poetry, actually. Nice. Because when I wrote, my first poem that I wrote was in 3rd grade, because we had a poet or author or whatnot come down to visit us. And she was trying to walk us through poetry. I barely paid her any mind. Back then, my mindset was poetry is for girls. I'm not writing a poem. All of this little, oh, it warms my heart. No. Wow. like that. No, I'm a boy. No, that does nothing for me. But, eventually, high school came about, and, there's the rise of the social medias and everything. And, I was bored one day and I just put one as like my status or whatnot. And it got some traction with the girls. And I was like, y'all like this? I mean, I could do this in my sleep, because it wasn't any, whatever I wrote, it wasn't anything thought-provoking or appealing. It was just rhyming some words together. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm just like, all right, well, y'all like it, I love it. You know what I'm saying? So I kept doing it. And then eventually it was like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this. I can actually, so then I started challenging myself. All right, so let me try to get a certain topic to write. You know what I mean? And I just went from there and went from topic to topic. It's like, oh, I actually got a gift for this. I actually got a knack for this. And it's not just for girls. You know what I'm saying? Sure. So I did all of that. And eventually I got my first girlfriend. And then I wrote poetry for her. And then that was smooth until we broke up. and then I was Heartbreak City, and then it was just a
Which
whole,
produced more poetry.
which produced a lot more poetry. But it was at that point that I started to understand the gravity of my gift. I started to understand that there are people that go through life and things just like I do that will very much vibe to what I'm putting out. As that's because that's what they were telling me. You know what I mean? Like I would write heartbreak poems or dark poems and stuff like that. And people were just like, yo, I'm going through a dark time period in my life. Like I can relate to this. You know what I mean? And then from there, it was just like, oh, well, I mean, I don't mind writing it for y'all or writing it in general because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm really good at this and y'all are getting something from it. So it's like a handshake agreement, you know, I'm just going to write poems and I'm just going to put them out. But you know, after doing it for so long, it's just like, no, I got an actual gift for this. Like the main comparison that I try to make is when you go through a breakup, right? Whether it's the first time or however many times you've been through it, you don't go rush to listen to some happy-go-lucky music.
This is true.
You go and you play some sad things. Why do you play sad things? You play sad things because you want something to be able to be relate to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for me, it was just like, that's what I want to do for people. You know, I want to be able to make and create content that people can relate to because I don't want them to feel how I felt when I was going through my breakup. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't enough sad songs in the world to quench my sad little heart, to heal me, you know what I mean? But when I was writing and I was getting them poems off and like I was seeing the love and people, you know, take the poetry that I wrote, the words that I created, and actually it means something to them. Like it started meaning something to me. And from there, man, I just started taking my writing more seriously. You know, started investing time writing more poetry and challenging myself here and there. And one thing led to another, and this is where we are now.
During the time that I feel like you were doing poetry, in high school, I was in college, of course, at the time. I feel like slam poetry really became a huge thing during that time. Would that be correct? During your high school years, that slam poetry was on the rise? Maybe it was before, but I definitely remember it during the time. Actually, while I was still in my undergrad, I got exposed to a little bit more of that. Was that an influence in another? Was that another tool? Because you were influenced, obviously, for other reasons. But when you started to maybe pick up momentum, was that something that continued to fuel the flame or the fire, so to speak?
That's it's funny that you asked that because a lot of people ask me that. Yeah, obviously that initially influenced you as far as the heartbreak and everything else, but like, did anything else along the way help further influence you or help you improve? And to be honest with you, not really, man.
Okay.
How I looked at it, and it wasn't the best way of looking at it, but back then, even as early as early, not early, but late as a few years ago, I was looking at it from the perspective of, if I'm going to look at somebody else's work, I may be influenced by their work. So therefore, my own work might start to just look like a copy of theirs because like I'm so impressed with what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Get it.
And then I had one of my friends / mentors talk to me. He was like, you know, I thought that same way too about, you know, writing plays and everything. But what I found out is just like, you don't have to let their voice become your voice. You can just learn from what they're doing. You can see something and in their right, you get inspired to do something else, but that will never happen if you don't take the time to, you know, just go out and look and be exposed to that. You know, because like I watched one poetry video. I mean, I watched a few, but one that really stood out. Are you familiar with Shihan?
You might have to send me a link for me.
Oh, I
to see
will.
okay.
I will. So
Okay.
it was one video that I saw on YouTube that he did, and it was phenomenal. It was so powerful, phenomenal. I looked at that, and I looked at my own poetry skills, and I looked like I am nowhere near. Like I am a kindergartner writing poetry compared to him. Like he is phenomenal. And so me looking at that, I was just like, you know what? I want to get like that one day. I want to get to where he's at on his level of performing poetry and writing poetry and everything else like that. So he was like really the only one that really truly and inspired me. And it's not because nobody else could. It's just because I never gave anybody else a chance. You know?
Sure, makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thinking back to the times that I've heard you do stand-up poetry, you didn't have that rhythmic trend that I saw others do. And I saw others do it very well. I had a friend of mine back in my undergrad years, Z Bilal. Man, her name was Zahara. Phenomenal singer and phenomenal poet. She was one of the first ones, I think, that was tangible to me and connected to me, that I heard her express her poetry, and it blew me away. I mean, I wrote a little something, but I never did anything publicly. It was just, I'll write music. So that was an easy kind of, side, like, let me just, I'm feeling this, let me write it out. But I went back to writing music, but that was something that was really, really impressive. So I've been always impressed by poets such as yourself and people who have a particular skill with that, because it's such a unique craft. It's not exactly rap, and it's not exactly, just singing. It's just its own space and its own gift and power, that when you hear it, you know that you've been transformed, and you know that it has the ability to do just the same as that particular song or that sound or that riff, so to speak. That being said, I'm going to take a shift. Our theme of the show is resilience. What does resilience mean for you?
For me, it's to keep going when everything else around you is telling you to stop. When everything, like when nobody would blame you if you put on the brakes and just stopped. You know what I mean? Like resilience to me is the strength to keep pushing, to keep going. I don't have to tell you, man. Like you're older than me. Like life happens.
No. But you know what? Yes, it does. But express to me, because your truth and your voice matters. Right. Regardless if I'm older, I have experience, whatever, your voice matters, and you've lived life in a way that I could never attest to, and I could never say, oh yeah, I know that. So that's the beauty of how we learn from each other. So right. Speak your truth, brother.
So yeah, like I said, man, like resilience is the strength to keep going, man. Like I said, like I grew up in Inglewood, West Inglewood to be exact. For me it's Inglewood, whatever. But like I said, like there was not a lot of positive things going on. I got talked about, bullied almost every day. When I say bully, I don't mean like physically being bullied. It was just the mental, the verbal attacks. You know what I'm saying? Like all of these things hitting me left and right. I really couldn't play a lick worth of basketball. I didn't really have any interest in no other sports besides football, and my mom wouldn't let me play football. So it was like, I don't know, man. Like and I wasn't that good at school either. I guess I didn't apply myself as much as I could have. And all of these things, man, like I could have easily just been how a lot of my peers turned out. And it's not a knock to them at all. It's just, I look around like on my socials, on my Facebook and whatnot, and still have friends that I'm friends with from high school and elementary school, and to see what they're doing now. And some of them are thriving and doing well for themselves. Others are still doing the same exact thing that they were doing back when I knew them in high school and everything.
Yeah.
And I look at that and it's just like, somewhere along the way, that could have been me. I could have settled for whatever life, the hand that life dealt me. You know what I'm saying? Like I could have set up there and I could have kept that and I could have rolled with it. And nobody really would have said anything differently to me. You know, maybe some people would have been like, man, like you got a lot of talent and whatnot. Why don't you do this and do that? But other than that, everybody was just fine with me just existing, me just living life, doing a 9 to 5, coming home, you know, just doing the regular. And there's nothing, again, I'm not trying to put nobody down for whatever life choices, lifestyle you live, right? I'm just saying for me personally, like that's something that I could have done, but I didn't want that. You know, I wanted what was always told to me that would be unattainable.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, being a young Black man growing up in the hood, there were a lot of things that I was told, not necessarily verbally, but being told like, nah, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like you're from the hood, you'll never be able to do this and that. When I was writing, you know, like little short stories here and there, even when I was in high school writing poetry, you know, it's like, what are you doing? Like, it's basketball. Can you rap? Because if you can't rap, then you gotta play a sport. And if you're not good at school, then that means you can't be no doctor, no lawyer. So what is that? That's like what, 5 options? Rapper, a professional athlete. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you can count on your hand, like those are the limitations that was set before me. And it was like, nah, like that's not gonna be for me. Like I want to be different. I don't want to be better than you. I just want to be different than you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's what it. I mean, back then I didn't see it that way because I wasn't mature enough. You know what I'm saying? Back then it was like, no, I want to be better than you. Now, obviously, with some maturity, it's like, no, I just want to be different than you. But yeah, man, like resilience to me is looking at all of the odds, and even when, like I said, nobody would blame you for like not even putting up a fight or succumbing to the odds or whatnot. Nah, I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm gonna keep pursuing.
And I have to interject and say this because I think it's important for it to be said.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever a person's hustle is or their dream is, it doesn't matter what it is. There's certain qualities that are cultivated along the way. And one of the reasons why resilience comes to mind when it concerns you, because whether you decided you want to go, as my dad would say, if you want to be a manager over McDonald's, I don't care. As long as you give your all doing it is what I'm concerned about. And that always stuck with me. And that was something I saw in you. Whatever path you would have chose, one of the things that I took notice of, and we'll get a chance to talk about some of the staff at TMC, but one staff in particular began to describe to me your journey, literally just to get to TMC there and back, the multiple buses that you took for hours out of a time, just or trains, whatever, subways that you took just to get to TMC, to feed your passion and your dream. Whether you came there to do poetry or whether you came there to say, hey, I want to learn to sweep better, that action alone spoke volumes about you. And then, of course, when you and I had conversations, you may not know this, but I could think of one profound, I'm gonna do the best I can not to go so much on a tangent, but I want to share this with you. I loved the way that you process and you think, and we talked about anime and you were introducing me to all these different kind of anime because Dragon Ball Z was on the table of discussions, and we talked about gargles and all kind of stuff, cartoons galore and all this good stuff. But those conversations really triggered me. But one night I was doing a Bible study with you guys, and I don't think you noticed, but you were the game changer for me to say, you know what? The Bible study this is not for them. They need something on another level. They need some meditation classes. We need to be talking about consciousness and expansion and things like this. You asked me a question about the canonization of scriptures and the books of the Bible. And I don't exactly remember how you asked the question, but you asked me, I'll paraphrase, Rod, what was your idea of do you believe that it was, how do you think man or something had influence in assembling the canonization of scriptures? And when you asked me, I had to pause. And at the time, you didn't know I was doing a lot of extra biblical studies and things like that. And when you asked me, I answered you out of what I call my spirit, and it was spirit of truth. And I stood back after I answered you, and I was like, okay, I understand. This is another generation. And this generation, you have to come with a little bit more, you have to be able to unshed and share your truth and connect with them in a different kind of way. And you were one of the catalysts that made me come to that realization. So I wanted to drop that down, but let me zoom out for a bit and talk about your journey to TMC. You talked about your passion and really putting in the work to cultivate that passion. What is TMC? What does that represent to you? Why did you decide to go there, and what made you continue to connect with that location? So what is it?
So TMC, the Miracle Center, is a nonprofit organization. They do a lot of work in the neighborhood. Predominantly, it's more of an incubator of the arts for the neighborhood or whatnot, or just for Chicago, because they've grown now, obviously. And they put on a lot of shows, a lot of plays and everything. How I got into TMC was one day, one of the gentlemen that I'm still good friends with and the mentor of, Rob, he came down to our school and it was lunchtime. He was like, hey, does anybody want to get into acting? And for me, at that point, that was another like little passion of mine. It's like in my house, like I would always walking around, like pretending like I was acting and like saying these monologues and everything. Like, yo, I want to be an actor. You know what I'm saying? Because as a kid, as a teenager, it's just like you got like all of these things that you want to be, and you just want to go ahead like, oh, one day I'm going to be an author. One day I'm going to be an astronaut. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever day on a random day, you just want to be anything. So that day, like, I really wanted to be an actor. So I filled out the application. It was for After School Matters. And, they told us what day it started, what day to be there. And I remember walking in the first day. And I was already kind of nervous because I didn't know what maybe no, I'll tell you that. I knew one person that was there, right? But he was running late. So I walk in, don't know anybody. I'm already nervous because, like I said, I'm a social outcast. So my social skills already, for one, are not there, because how can I have any type of social skills if I'm not socializing with anybody my age? Sure. You know what I'm saying? Sure. So there's that for one. There's two, I'm still taller than everybody. Yeah. So like I'm already going in with the expectation of the normal, oh my God, dang, how can you, like everybody rushing me and everything else like that. So I get in there and yeah, people look at me, but not a single person asked me how tall I was.
Wow. That
is the first place, and I believe one of the very few places I've actually been in that I walked into and nobody said anything about my height. Now, I don't know whether it was the spirit telling everybody, like, relax, just calm down. He's just like you. Just welcome him in. Just embrace him. It's cool. Don't worry about it. Or maybe they felt maybe they would have been rude by asking. I don't know what it was. But I knew once they did that, it felt like home. You know what I mean? Because I have not gotten that kind of, respect as far as my height thing goes, except at home.
Yeah.
So I was like, yo, this feels like home. And then, Mary, the director, the creator of TMC, like she welcomed me with open arms. She invited me to go camping, you know what I'm saying, with her family one time. And she's been kind to me and warm and generous ever since, So me being there, it just felt like home. You know what I mean? I felt like at that point, um, if it's home, then why not be there? You know what I mean? Like there were like different programs they would have different after school matter programs throughout the year. Um, then they had one over the summer and everything. I just got acclimated with the system and with everybody there. You know what I mean? Like I've been with TMC now for over 10 years at this point, and it's just been home. It's just been another home, man. And when you say like I traveled there for like, a change to better for the hunger and the growth in me, like, yeah. People look at me now when I tell them like, yo, I used to travel this X amount of time to go to school or to go to work. And they look at me like, yo, you travel over an hour, over 45 minutes to work. And it's just like, that's not normal for y'all. Like y'all have never done that. You know what I mean? And it's interesting that you sat here and you brought that up, because I never really looked at it in terms of anything special. I just looked at it as, yo, this is where I want to be at. So in order for me to get there, my mom can't take me. I gotta get there on public transportation. Period. You know what I mean? And looking at it now, for how it helped shape me and what my abilities and my gifts now, it's like it's equivalent to what people were doing in like sports and everything. The things they tried to get me to go into, like with sports, I would have been there for practice every day or however many times a day, then do the games, and then during the summer doing like summer tournaments and everything else like that, just making sacrifices. The same thing is like a TMC. Like I made sacrifices. Like there were a lot of things that I could have been a part of around the house and around the neighborhood and whatnot, but it was just like, no, I wanted to be at TMC. Like I knew the people, I knew the environment. It was a safe, positive environment. That's not something that I was used to outside of my own home.
Wow. Wow.
So TMC is like, shout out to TMC. TMC did a lot for me.
Well, and shout out to the TMC family. Again, director Mary Santana, Vanessa BB, and Adrian, and Jose, Papa Jose.
Yes,
And
Jose.
all the peeps. In fact, it was instrumental in Vash and our meeting at TMC at the Miracle Center. So that was our place of meeting. So that's a very special place in my heart. And again, for Adrian, me meeting Adrian at a conference way in Arkansas. I think it was Arkansas, Oklahoma. I was in New Mexico at the time. And him opening up that door for me to be able to come up there and connect with you all. So very, very special times, man. Obviously, years later, I met you in 2014, and lo and behold, we're still in connection. And so much love to my other younger brothers.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
And I'm gonna give it right back to you, man. Like
No,
God is good, man.
God is good.
Because like when you really think about that, like you were in New Mexico, he was in Arkansas.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like obviously it's bigger than me and you, but just how me and you came to connect.
Absolutely.
All of those things, like man.
That deserves a power pause, because and this would derail me, so I'm going to truncate as much of this as possible. But before I came to Chicago, the Spirit had told me to put in my 2-month resignation. I didn't know where I was going to go. I had been in New Mexico at this time for almost 12 years. So I didn't know where I was going to go. All I knew that my time was wrapping up and I had to be obedient. And so once I put that 2-month in, that was like November 1st, 2013. The conference that Adrian and I met at was, I think at the end of that month, right before no, it was like like November 15th, right before Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving break. We met, connected. It was just, hey, you know, I went to one of his workshops, enjoyed his workshop. At the time, I was the director for an Upper Bound program. And so he was promoting and sharing his business with all the directors and whatnot. We enjoyed ourselves. And it was as simple as, hey, man, you know, well, I'm thinking about coming up to Chicago. At that time, it was Chicago, New York, or back to Texas at that time. So I was like, hey, I'm thinking about coming to Chicago. If I come, I would love to connect with you. Yeah, sure. You know how, you know, you meet somebody for the first time, you connect, bada boom, bada bing. That was it.
Yeah.
Long story short, ended up coming out to Chicago about a month and a half after that. Things just aligned in a way that I was able to come out there. And then I think I met you that summer of 2014. I had just started managing one of the summer grants there for employment, for youth employment. And yeah, and you were one of the first ones. I think you and Ozzy were one of the first two that I met at TMC. Yep. As far as the youth. So yep. Very impactful. Very impactful.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, to all of you guys, man, all of you, man, you definitely have a place in my heart, and will always have that place in my heart, man. So glad to hear that. Well, let's keep this train moving.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about TMC. We talked about what resilience means to you, and why I think you represent resilience. And you've mentioned that out of that resilience, well, you didn't mention this, but I'm going to mention this. You mentioned that you are a 3-time author, and I'm going to tie that back into, of course, that resilience, that those books came out of that kind of resilience that you had. And I want you to share it, if you can, your top 3 favorite lines from a piece of literature that you wrote. Yeah, I could have been wicked and said, give me your number 1, but I gave you at least 3.
You know what? No, I could do the one.
Okay, give me the one.
So as Rod mentioned before, I'm really into anime, you know, cartoons, all those type of shows, man. And there's one, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's called My Hero Academia. Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, so it's a show. It's an anime. It's a manga that was turned into an anime. It's basically in this world, a lot of people are heroes. They're born with powers, and they're called quirks.
Okay.
And the name of the show is My Hero Academia because it just tells it's following the tale of this boy who goes through and has his own superhero origin story, pretty much, and it just shows how he's going through the motion of how to become a better hero, and like all of his classmates around him, because they have schools dedicated to training you how to be a hero, all of these things, right? So it was a poem, it was a love poem, and I wrote, My Hero Academia, I'm in love with your quirk. And for me, I've written a lot of lines and a lot of poems, or I guess you would call them punchlines if it was like a rap or a rap battle or something like that, like punchlines. Like I've written a lot of them that I was really happy about, but I think that one stuck out to me a lot because, for one, it was dedicated to my girlfriend. So that within itself is special. But for me to be able to combine my love for poetry, my girlfriend, who I dearly love, and anime, and to combine all
Shout
of
out
those.
to the girlfriend.
Shout out to the girlfriend. And like to have all 3 of those in one thing, to me, to be able to write and to execute it, it was beautiful.
Wow.
It was beautiful, man. Like for me, like that's my favorite line, man. That's my favorite line.
I'm going to say this quote, but the quote was something I meant to share earlier when you were talking about what fueled your skill set as a poet, and that was Broken Heart. But there was a phrase that I came across a few years back saying, turn your broken heart into art. And to see that manifest over the years, where it's not a broken heart, but a happy heart that's been turned to that much more art, and seeing that Sierra has been one to inspire you in such a way. And so, and am I saying her name correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And I'm so glad that I know it's Sierra, and I saw her on a platform that you guys had, because it would be a horrible situation for me to call her by name and you got another girlfriend. That wouldn't be good. We have to edit this part out to record it.
No, man. Oh man, it's Sierra.
But nonetheless, we're about coming to the end of this journey. So tell us a little bit about your podcast, what you're doing with that, just so my audience can be familiar with the kind of content that you're working on beyond your poetry and your writing.
Absolutely. So my podcast is called Reset the Vibe. It's been going for about 2.5 years now, roughly. It'll be 3 years in August. Yeah, man, I'm happy about it, man. Like it's amazing. Do you mind if I give it like a little short story of how it started before I get to it?
Yeah, well, the fact that you mentioned August, that's the month of a king being born. You take whatever time you need.
And man, so my last book that I put out, my poetry book, Addressing Insecurities, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do a rollout for it, because I figured out what worked and what didn't work from the first two, as far as marketing and everything else goes. I want to do something different. So I had a few friends that had podcasts, right? And they were multiple friends, right? Because I had maybe about 2, 3, or 4 friends that each had their own podcast. They were doing different things. And I reached out and I'm like, hey, I have a book that's coming out. I would like to promote it on your podcast and everything. Do you think that'd be cool? Essentially, it gave me like, yeah, well, we can't do it now because, we're booked up until this time. Or, hey, that sounds great. Let me get back to you. All in all, never happens for any one of them. There's no love lost, right?
Sure,
they're still some of my friends, still cool people. It just never happened.
Sure.
So I was like, you know what? I definitely want to do this. And I really had an interest in podcasts because I was listening to podcasts like almost every day during that time. So I would sit there. I sat there and I thought about it. I'm like, all right, I'm going to start a podcast. And I was like, all right, what am I going to call it? I'm like, okay, I'm going to call it Writing Sorrows, because that's what I originally started writing my poetry. Well, not initially, but like how it really took off was me writing about sad things and writing about sorrows. So why not call it Writing Sorrows? You know what I mean? Wow. So it was basically me telling everybody my start of my poetry journey from the beginning all the way up until the book's release. So it's giving people different kind of information on, like I said, like how it started, the ups and downs, the challenges, where the idea came for certain poems or books, like all of those things. And when it came to the conclusion of it and I was done and the book was out and I had stopped doing the podcast, people were just like, so when's the next episode coming out? And I'm like, I wasn't planning on another episode. I was just planning on doing, you know what I'm saying? But I was having fun doing it. You know what I mean? Like I developed a passion for it. I was like, well, I mean, if y'all want it, like I don't mind it. You know what I mean? But I want to try to find like a co-host, because I found that me just talking by myself, I hadn't developed those muscles yet for me to just do a podcast by myself. Because I don't know if you've done it, just had a podcast where it's just like a 30 minutes, 15, 20 minutes of you just talking. Maybe you could do it because like you've done some public speaking before. You know what I'm saying? So maybe it'll be easier for you.
It's still a challenge. It's still a challenge, but yes, I've done it, and I understand that it's a different feel when you have to carry the show by yourself. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, stepping into that field with like no kind of trainer or anything, it was just like, man, this is rough. Because I found myself listening back to the podcast and was like, oh man, I'm hearing myself saying and not speaking as clear as I wanted to be speaking. It's just like, this is rough, man. I need somebody to bounce off of.
Yeah.
So I wound up, getting my brother on, asked my brother, like, yo, do you want to do this like full time? Not like a job, but you know what I mean? Like, you want to go do this? We're like, yeah, I don't mind doing it. So we wound up doing it, and the podcast grew to where it's at now. And basically what the podcast is today is when we have a guest, which is most of the time now, it's a person doing cool stuff in their field. You know what I mean? It's an opportunity for them to have a platform to talk about or promote their work or whatever they're doing. It's basically what I was never given. You know what I mean? Like, I want it to be an opportunity for people to come and do that. You know what I mean? And like, I don't charge people. I don't ask them any shocking or revealing questions that they weren't prepared for. Like, we don't do clickbait, like none of that. You know what I mean? Like, I want it to be authentic, genuine, and none of that. Like I said, like, because we could easily go viral by talking about or having some type of hot topic or opinion or something like that. But then you got to keep it all up all the time, because people going to be coming forward, back and forth for your content. It's like, that's draining. I don't care about half of the things that's going on with the celebrities. Like, I got my own things to worry about.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's unfortunate that you're going through a divorce, but I don't need to be another podcast amongst many podcasts talking about your divorce. There's nothing that I can say that hasn't already been said about what's going on with your situation. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I get it.
So yeah, like I said, the podcast is almost at 3 years now, and we just pretty much it's myself, it's my brother Darius, and it's my other good friend Cam. And every week we meet up, we chop it up, whether it's us or with the guests, and we just have fun, man. We have fun.
Well, I want to chime in and attest to my own experience being on y'all's show. That's exactly what it was. I love the way that you all designed it. You made me feel truly supported. Of course, you showed me love as you always do, and of course, meeting Darius. I mean, it was a great ingredient, man. It was something very special to be a part of that. And so, if you haven't had a chance to view or listen to Reset the Vibe, they're on Spotify, but I'm not going to steal his thunder because he can give all that information to you all later. But he'll give you his stuff here shortly. But this is the mentor coming out. What's your goals this next five years?
So the next 5 years is for me to really take everything that I've learned. So to take it back to when I first met you, 2014, since 2014, every year of my life, there's been some substantial growth. There's been another type of talent acquired or strengthened or whatever. There's always been some type of continuous growth.
Nice.
And the last few years, from me writing the poetry books, from me doing the podcast, to me even co-hosting an art show and everything, like all of those things have led to where I'm at now currently. So right now I'm working on my first novel. I plan to have that out sometime this summer, hopefully. If not the summer, then it's definitely coming out in the fall. But that's where I'm at with that. You said 5 years, 5 years, somewhere within that. Man, I just want to really I want to continue to grow my skills. I really want to continue to grow my skills. Not only that, but I also want to be encouraging. I want to be able to have a helping hand to those that's behind me, that's coming up, trying to find their way, that's trying to do this and they trying to do that. Like I want to be able to be a connector. You know what I'm saying? Like if this person has this need and I know somebody that can fulfill that need, and I can bring them together. And you know, they can talk about it or whatever the case may be. Because like that's another good thing that I'm naturally good at. You know, is bringing people together. So ultimately, like I said, like I want to get better with my writing. I want to put out more books because right now my poetry books, there's 2 of them, and then there's a third one that I did with the collaboration with another poet. So technically, on my own, I only have 2 books, poetry book wise. So I want to finish out that series with a trilogy, right? So there's one more book that I still have to write for it.
Okay.
So that's something that I want to do. But somewhere in these next 5 years, what I want to do is put on a really big showcase.
Okay.
I want to incorporate everything that I know with the people that I know and I love, that I know that are talented, that are, you know, busting their butt, working and crafting, mastering their craft, you know, and I want to be able to hold a space for them to be able to do that. You know, they can have loved ones, family come out, you know, promote it all online, just to be able to do that, just for them to get some exposure so they can, you know, help grow whatever it is that they're trying to grow. Cause like I said, like I just want to give back, because there's been a lot of people and a lot of things that have been poured into me. You know what I mean? Like you, TMC, Gerard, like it's just a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of things. And I want to be able to pay it forward. You know what I mean? And to me, like that's my greatest joy. That's what gives me joy, is to be able to give back. You know, as much as people have given to me and you know, poured into me, which is fine, like good, and I appreciate that. But I want to be able to pay it forward. You know what I mean?
Beautiful.
So
That my friend, that's the part. That's the part for any person, whether it's you, Mary's, Gerard, Rod, or anybody, to hear you want to give back what's been given to you. That's reciprocity. And that's powerful to hear it come from somebody that you've paid it forward to. So that's a beautiful thing, man. Beautiful thing. If I can push you into 10 years, just give me one thing that you see in 10 years where you see yourself.
I think, and it's a build up on what I just said. But what I would love to see is, to me, to be around living um, a good, positive, healthy life like I'm doing now, but to see everybody around me living and thriving and being blessed, bro.
There we go.
Like I could tell you that I want to be living in a nice place and have a yacht and have all these type of cars and, you know, have all the tangibles and things, and that's cool, that's dandy, but just to be able to know that I put in the work to make a better life for myself, but not just for myself, to be an example or inspiration for those that are looking for one.
Yeah.
To be able to be like, you know what? If he did it, I can do it too. Because for me, that's something that's big. Because like I don't present, like with all the success that I've had, I don't present myself as some social media celebrity. I don't present myself as like some hot shot or whatnot. Like I still live in Chicago. You still might be able to catch me riding around in Chicago at some McDonald's or something. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not untouchable. And like that's the thing that I want. If there's anything that I could leave behind, and I'm not trying to talk morbidly or anything, but if there's anything that I could leave behind, it's just like that was somebody that I felt like I could reach out and touch. And I think that that's important.
Yeah.
When you're able to, like we talked about earlier about representation, seeing somebody like you
That's real.
is one thing. But being able to see and hear from somebody talk about the things they overcame, the resilience and everything,
Yeah.
And they came from the same place that you did. They still are able to visually see you in the same places that they walk every day. That's inspiring to be like, yo, if they did it, they came from where I came from. They saw exactly what I saw.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And they overcame that. There was a choice for that. They didn't just let the life choose for them. They chose a different path. Like for me, like that's inspiring, bro. If I could help do that for somebody, then all of these things would have been worth it, man. Period.
Awesome. Awesome. Spoken like a true old souls, baby. Old souls. That was an old
Man,
show I actually have. I have.
man.
Um,
Old soul is what I got, man. You know this
yeah.
already. You already know
Oh
this. Like
yeah.
I had an old
Definitely.
soul since I was a kid, man.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, let's wrap it up and you just tell us where people can find you, um, give out your handles, all that good stuff, and then give us your final words.
Sure. So you can find me at Vash V17 across all socials. That's V as in victory, ASH as in ashy, V again as in victory, and then 17 like 17. So that's where you can find me on IG, Twitter, all of those things. You can find the podcast at Reset the Vibe. We are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, pretty much wherever you get your podcast. We try to have the pods out Fridays or Saturdays. Really depends on how things are going throughout the week in order for them to be edited and everything. But yeah, that's what we want to do it. And if I can leave you with anything, it's the same thing that I leave off on my podcast when I do it. Be kind to one another, take care of one another, and as always, love.
Awesome. Awesome. Please be sure whenever you are ready to promote your next books or whatever work you got coming up, conferences, let me know so we can bring you back on and you can tell us more about what you got going on. I would love to pay it forward, as you would say, as you have paid it forward for me, help me to promote my book, man. So I appreciate that, and I want to definitely get that back to you.
For sure, man. Listen, I've been working on this book for over a year now. Let me tell you, I am waiting. I am chomping at the bit to talk to people about this book, man.
Nice.
I'm waiting. Because it's not. It's in the final stages and it's not copyrighted yet, which is why I haven't talked about it.
Yeah.
But man, as soon as I send the papers off, listen, I'm gonna hit you up, be like, hey, yo, Rod, it's about that time.
Let's do it. I will be sure. Let's pencil this in. Got it.
Yes, sir.
Right,
I appreciate you, bro.
Man, likewise. Well, let me go ahead and end the show at this point. You stay on. But let me get things wrapped up and we'll go from there. As always, it has been a fantastic show. I am always humbled by the guest that comes on, and this was really special for me for a number of reasons because of what's been talked about. So I'm not going to go back through the interview. You all have a fantastic week, and I look forward to seeing you, whether it's in a class, whether it's in a podcast, or whether it's just one of my crazy videos that are being sent out. Much love to you. Remember, join the wave. You can like, subscribe, and do all those other things, but join the wave. Just make a concerted, conscious effort to heal and optimize. That's it. Bye. You stay on, sir.